Okay, today we're going to learn about lung volumes and capacities. A device called a spirometer measures the amount of air entering and exiting the lungs. Notice on the y-axis we have volume in milliliters. If we were to graph the amount of air entering and exiting the lungs during quiet breathing, it would look like this. The line goes up when the volume inside the lung increases during inhalation and goes down when the volume decreases during exhalation. Each peak represents the volume of air that entered the lungs during inhalation. Likewise, each valley represents the amount of air that exited the lungs during exhalation. The amount of air entering or exiting the lungs during quiet breathing is known as tidal volume. In this graph, you see someone breathing normally and then taking a deep breath in, but exhaling normally. We could measure inspiratory reserve volume, which is the amount of air entering the lungs in addition to tidal volume during a maximum inhalation. We could measure inspiratory reserve volume from the peak of a tidal volume to the peak of our maximum inhalation. If a patient was told to breathe in normally and then exhale as hard as they could, the graph would look like this. Expiratory reserve volume is the amount of air leaving the lungs in addition to the tidal volume during a maximum exhale. We could measure ERV from the valley of a tidal volume to the valley of our maximum exhale. No matter how hard we exhale, we cannot blow out all of the air in our lungs. The remaining air is called the residual volume. The residual volume is the amount of air remaining in the lungs after a maximum exhale. We would need to use other methods besides spirometry to measure residual volume. It is here represented by a zero line. Lung volumes can be added together to determine lung capacities. For example, the vital capacity is the tidal volume plus the IRV plus the ERV. If we were to measure vital capacity, we could take a measurement from the peak of maximum inhale to the valley of our maximum exhale. Inspiratory capacity is the IRV plus tidal volume. If we were to measure inspiratory capacity, we would take a measurement from the valley of the tidal volume to the peak of our maximum inhale. Functional residual capacity is the expiratory reserve volume plus the tidal volume. To measure this, we would measure from the peak of a tidal volume to the valley of our ERV. And finally, total lung capacity equals the IRV plus the ERV plus the TV plus the RV. In other words, it's the total lung capacity. We would measure this from the peak of our maximum inhale, right there, to the zero line. This zero line represents the residual volume.